We just witnessed a historic performance that almost culminated in an epic collapse. But you know what it turned into? A Tar Heel dub. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Monday, February 26th, 2024. Welcome into this live postcast edition of the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shea, joining you all just about an hour plus after the game ended. I'm back in my hotel room from the Dean Dome. A great but crazy experience in the place tonight. Went from elation to what on earth is happening, but it was a win. Want to thank you everydayers for joining us, getting your Tar Heels content every single day. If you're new or just joining us, we're so glad that you're here as well. Come on in. Here's how we handle these live postcasts. Got 4 observations for you. Got to ad read 4 more observations, and then we'll hop in the comments and see if there's some questions or observations you have that we can talk about. All right, here we go. The score, Carolina 75, Miami 71. The Tar Heels are now 21-6 overall, 14-3 in ACC play. Look, this was a quad 3 win, so it's not great, but it's a win. So it was one of those situations where it can't really help you, but it certainly can hurt you, and you just want to stay away from that, which is barely, but actually what Carolina did in this one. Ken Pom has updated the Tar Heels are 8th overall, 24th in offensive efficiency, and 8th in defensive efficiency. Big picture, great news. Carolina has clinched no worse than the 2nd seed in the ACC tournament. As I said on today's show earlier on Monday, that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is the 1 seed. Can't quite wrap that up yet. Got several more wins to get to, but it's a big step. The Tar Heels have clinched the 2 seed, at least in the ACC tournament. Double bye will start play on Thursday. You love to see that. All right, big picture. How can we but start anywhere with RJ Davis after this performance? If this man, hear me say this, if RJ Davis had not already locked up the ACC Player of the Year, which, by the way, I think he had, book it. That award is his. Get number 4 up in the rafters because this dude is going to get that award. Y'all, that I'm telling you, that step back 3 he hit on Matthew Cleveland for his 4th 3 in like a 3-minute span was like right in front of where Coach Rob and I were sitting. Ridiculous. That place erupted and it was bonkers. And also Matthew Cleveland. Good job, Coach L, putting that height of Matthew Cleveland on RJ. And it clearly, height has bothered RJ. It's been tough on him. But tonight, there was nobody stopping that freight train that was the man from White Plains, New York. He had more points in the first 13 and a half minutes of this game than he did in the entirety of Saturday's game. Had 20 points in both halves, set a Smith Center scoring record. Tyler Hansbrough previously held it with 40 points. Now it's RJ's. 42 points on 14 of 22 from the field, 7 of 11 from 3. That means it was also 7 of 11 from 2, by the way, and 7 of 9 at the free throw line. You love to see that it's not just the threes. It's not just the frees. It's every level of scoring. Good luck stopping that, anybody, when it's on like it was tonight. But here's what I love about RJ Davis. What are we talking about? The scoring. Like, that is our big conversation tonight. But like, let's just set that aside. RJ also did these things. Did you see how dialed in defensively he was, particularly in the first half? Was guarding doggedly, was up in, kind of like at Seth Trimble levels of like getting up into his guy. But also contributed 6 rebounds and 4 steals in this game. RJ was everywhere doing everything. And by the way, with 7 threes, he is now up to 90 threes this season. This dude might legitimately get to 100 before the regular season is even over. And oh, by the way, let me remind you, no Tar Heel other than Justin Jackson has ever gotten to triple digits in threes. And Justin had 105. RJ is going to blow past that record. RJ right now already at 90 means he is in eighth place, all by himself. Crazy stuff. Right ahead of him with 93, that's the next people to jump, is Joel Berry in 17-18 and Caleb Love in 21-22. And then right above that's Marcus Page with 94 threes and 14-15. So just climbing that ladder. Way to go, RJ. You love to see it. All right. As much as we got to celebrate RJ, look, we all, oh boy, folks, we got to talk about the letdown. The back end of this thing was just bad. Carolina's inability to handle the pressure that and you knew Miami was going to start bringing it because they had to change what they were doing, and Carolina just could not handle it. It was funny. Coach Rob and I were riding an elevator up after the game, just back up to ground level or whatever. And Phil Ford was actually on the elevator with us. And right before that, Phil was joking about how I know what they're going to be doing at practice tomorrow, running that offensive press break. And that's exactly what it's got to be, because there is no reason that a team with RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau and Seth Trimble and Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram should be having any trouble breaking the press. But it was like Carolina just suddenly lost their minds, and then Miami suddenly hitting everything again. And then Carolina starts missing the free throws. All the guy like Mondo just lost his touch tonight, really struggled. And you could see it. There was that one he missed long, and the angle that we had from our seats, you could just tell it was like Mondo's not even close on these. But unfortunately, all he needed was one, and that would have been a 4-point lead, ball game over. But couldn't hit it. Carolina decided to foul up 3, which was kind of funny because Coach Williams was right in front of us as well. And you remember, but he had those 2 different moments his final year where he did foul Duke and we lost. And then there was another one where he didn't foul. It was at the Clemson game where Clemson won at the Smith Center, and then that. And so that was just kind of funny just watching his reactions to those moments. But look, Carolina just kind of struggled there. And by the way, keep in mind, this is happening. Miami did not have Nigel Pack or Wooga Poplar in this game, and yet are still doing all these things. So Carolina has to figure out those end of game moments. It's like the exact same thing that happened at the end of the game down at Miami. You remember that Carolina had that big lead and then let Miami kind of scratch and claw back into it. But here's what I want to say at the end of this conversation of the letdown. You know what happened when the final buzzer sounded? The North Carolina Tar Heels had 75 points. The Miami Hurricanes had 71. So was the ideal perfect or ideal? In no way. But when you look at the win-loss column from this game, that's what we'll remember. And you know what else we'll remember? Mr. RJ Davis. So, dear goodness, in your conversations at the water cooler or wherever you go tomorrow, sure, talk about the letdown at the end of the game, but make sure that RJ's performance is not overshadowed by that. We got to talk RJ. You love to see it. It's funny. I kind of joked like that ending where Carolina kept getting all those offensive rebounds on free throws was like the ending of the Oregon 2017 Final Four game. Remember that, where Theo and everybody kept getting those offensive rebounds? All Carolina needed to do was hit free throws to ice it. Couldn't, but the free throw offensive rebounds were there. And so I put that out on Twitter, and then somebody else joked back. It was like that game mixed with a little bit of the win over Baylor in the 22 tournament in Fort Worth in the second round. It's like, yeah, that's a mixture of all those. But you know what's true about tonight and both of those previous games? Carolina wins, and that's exactly what happened. Number 3, let's move on to talking about Harrison Ingram. It was a tough night shooting for our man. 3 of 13 from the field, 1 of 5. He utilized that kind of ISO on the side, back down. He just couldn't get it to fall multiple times. It was weird, but was able to get in, and you love to see that. But here's what I love about Harrison Ingram. Despite his tough shooting night, and he still had 8 points, made his only free throw attempt, great stuff. Harrison Ingram was everywhere. This is a game where you cannot just look at the box score and say, oh, Harrison Ingram sucked tonight. No, Harrison Ingram was a critical piece of this victory. He was all over the court because while he didn't shoot well, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, and 5 steals. So he and RJ together combined for 9 steals. Something Coach Rob kept saying to me is, as Miami would inbound, we call them blob plays, baseline out of bounds, they would just always throw it to the backcourt, not really run anything to get a good look at the rim, which is kind of weird. Like, hey, you're under the rim, run some action, see if you can get a layup and some miscues on defense or get a corner three or something. So they keep doing this. Harrison Ingram timed it up, got a tip, and grabbed the rebound. Forgive me, in real time right now, I can't remember what resulted from that play, but it's almost like I don't care how fast a pitcher is. If all they have is a fastball, eventually major league hitters are going to time it up. And that's exactly what Harrison did. He had another play where he kind of stole a pass. It looked like it was going to go out of bounds right over in front of the ESPN broadcast area, but he was able to just save it and get all the way to the rim for a layup. And that was right after Miami had cut it to 4. That grew the lead back out. Dude, Harrison Ingram, what a performance. Fourth thing I want to talk about is the bench activity in this game. You're really, really starting to see it turn into this 8-man rotation firmly. No, kind of moving beyond, or, we'll see a little Okonkwo here, a little Zayden there, a little Paxton Wojcik here or there as well. But it really is the 5 starters, the Jaylens and Seth. And just like they did on Saturday, they contributed in some critical and major ways. And again, it wasn't like massive scoring output. They had 7 combined from the bench. Seth had 3 and Jalen Withers had 4. But even just looking at how, again, with the bench, it's like about affecting the game in important ways when you are in. And that's exactly what they did. How about this? This is now the second game in a row where a bench player had the best plus minus on the team. It was Jalen Withers on Saturday. Tonight, it was Seth Trimble, who was plus 12. And oh, by the way, a bench player was second on the team in plus minus. That was Jalen Withers again with plus 8. And oh, by the way, Jaylen Washington tied for the third best plus minus on the team with plus 3. These guys are coming in and making a helpful and critical difference. Let me talk more about Jalen Withers for a minute, because, we'd kind of gone through a little bit of a lull, and man, he's making some important, helpful things. He had that putback in the first half that was critical. I think that made it like 15-11. He had a block. Obviously, he hit those 2 very critical free throws when nobody else could seem to be able to do so. That gave Carolina the final score. But you know what I love that Jalen Withers did more than anything in this game? He drew 5 fouls on Miami. 5. That's like Armando level. Armando, I think, also drew 5, and RJ drew 6, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me look back at the box score really quick. Yes. Armando drew 5, RJ drew 6, Jalen Withers drew 5 fouls. That is so helpful to your team. All right, got 4 more things we want to talk about. We're going to do that in a second, including talking about the defense and points per possession. We'll get to that in just a second, right after I tell you that this live postcast is brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. North Carolina, the wait is almost over. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming finally to the Tar Heels state on March 11th. You'll be able to bet on all your favorite teams in all your favorite sports. With FanDuel, there's a ton of different ways for you to get in on all the action. You can bet on everything, from the money line to over-unders to which team will win the second iteration of this year's Tobacco Road rivalry. Hard to believe that's like a week and a half from right now. All of this on an app that's safe, it's secure, and super easy to use. Plus, with live betting, you can do things in real time, like what player is going to score the next basket or the one after that, whatever you want to do. So come see for yourself why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon so you can be the first to know when FanDuel finally goes live in North Carolina. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, folks, as we keep talking here, for those of you watching, obviously we'll put this up on audio later, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up the box score so you can see that as we're chatting here. Boom, there we go. Love to see that. Now, as we get back into it, I got to say a very, very special word of thanks to Coach Bill Robinson, Coach Rob, that's on with us every week. A couple months ago, he said, Isaac, we're going to be at the Smith Center in a couple months. You should just come be with our team. So here's the story behind that. Coach, as you know, is the head coach of Milligan University's varsity basketball team. what you might not be aware of is just like North Carolina, Milligan still has a JV team, which is coached by one of Coach Rob's assistants, Alex Biggerstaff. Shouts to Coach Big. Great job tonight. Way to go. So we actually were at the Dean Dome basically all afternoon. We were there for the JV game earlier in the day. In fact, the guys are riding back on the bus right now. Special shout out to you all as you travel back to Johnson City tonight. Be safe as you go. Great energy. It was a fun game to watch. The guys were down by just 3 at the half and man, really, really fought hard. So it was a true honor to be with you all today. Thanks for letting me be part of your travel party. It was a lot of fun to be with you. All right, let's get back into the conversation. I want to talk about points per possession, because this is not the only metric of what is or what is not a good defense. Obviously, you just got to look at it and you see how many points are scored and things like that. But Carolina had made defense a staple of that 10-game winning streak. We've talked ad nauseum about this at this point. But then as they went through that losing 3 games in 5-game stretch where they went 2-3, the defense was giving it back. And teams were consistently scoring over 1 point per possession against the Tar Heels. And that's kind of, if you don't hear us talk about that, that's the goal. You as an offense want to score above 1, and you as a defense want to hold your opponent under 1. Obviously, Carolina held Virginia under 1 point per possession on Saturday. But here's the good news. They did it again tonight against Miami. And let's go half by half with this. In the first half, Miami was 0.889 points per possession. And in the second half, they did get up over 1. But then for the game, they were 0.986. So Carolina now for 2 games in a row has held their opponent back under a point per possession. And that's the kind of thing we're looking at. Before that, Carolina, in that 10, starting with Oklahoma, they went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row where they held opponents under 1 point per possession. Getting back to that now. We'll see if they can do it Saturday against NC State. That'll be critical to watch. But meanwhile, on the flip side of that, Carolina was back over a point per possession on offense, 1.087. That is what we're talking about. They had been held under for just the 3rd time all season last week or on Saturday. Part of this defense is, you all know it because you all saw it or listened to it or whatever, how incredibly hot Miami was from 3. But despite that, Carolina still held them under a point per possession in the first half. Why? Because while Miami was 8 for 13 from beyond the arc, they were just 4 of 19 from inside the arc because Carolina was doing a great job on it. The refs were letting them play very physical both ways. There were not many fouls being called. It was a while before the first foul was called in the game. And who do we had? Pat Driscoll, Ron Groover, and Ted Valentine. It was funny. Coach Robin actually followed Ted Valentine out through the tunnel right after the game. I was trying to get video, but couldn't get my phone up in time. So that was pretty funny. But they were letting them go, man. It was physical and it was tight, and Carolina took advantage of it again, because this is a tough, gritty team that doesn't mind mixing it up a little bit. And you love to see that. Cormac took that 3 in the corner, got tangled up, I think with Keyshawn George. Is that who it was? And they were jawing a little bit. You love to see it. Speaking of which, that's the last thing I want to say about points per possession and defense here, is that Seth Trimble did a really good job on Keyshawn George. We'll talk about him more on the Tuesday full show, but especially with Pack and Poplar out, you knew he was going to be a critical part of their offense. He was in the first half where he had 11 points, but Seth in particular did a really good job on him in the second half. Cormac Ryan had some time on him too. But man, Seth picked him up. There was one possession in particular. Seth picked him up full court and just didn't let him do anything. It was beautiful to watch. Way to go, defense. Number 2 on this back half. Look, Cormac Ryan. A game like this was coming. I've been saying it. He's not going to be able to continue to shoot at the level he has game in and game out. You're going to have games like this. In this one, Cormac shot the same from the field as Harrison did, 3 of 13, and just 1 of 9 from 3. After shooting 50% from 3 for the past 4 games. It was bound to happen. But here's the good news. Carolina has so many weapons, and really they just needed the one weapon tonight in RJ, but there's so many weapons that even if Harrison and even if Cormac are a combined 6 of 26 from the field, they can survive it, and should have survived it by more than 4. It should have still been a double-digit victory. That to me is encouraging. because there's going to be a game in March, I promise you, where Cormac will shoot like this again, or Harrison. And hopefully in those kind of games, Armando will go big, or RJ will go big, or the flip. Hopefully if RJ's struggling like he did Saturday, then Cormac's going off, or Harrison's having a big game. Whatever it is, this is a team with enough weapons and enough talent to really offset somebody else having a bad shooting day. I want to talk about, thirdly, on this back half, how critical second chance points were in this game. Carolina won the second chance points battle 16-3. And it's not like Carolina had an astronomical more amount of offensive rebounds than did Miami. Carolina had 10, Miami had 6. And so the gap between how many offensive rebounds the team had and the gap between how many second chance points they had are completely different, because Carolina did a much better job of turning their offensive rebounds into points. That's how you go win a basketball game, even when you got a couple guys not shooting well. There was that one possession in the second half, the one where RJ got fouled on the 3. He hit his first 2 free throws, missed the second one, but that was another free throw offensive rebound. Man, Carolina had a bunch of those. I'm curious to go through and do my offensive rebounding numbers and see just how many. I want to guess there were 3, maybe 4 total free throw offensive rebounds. And so that's incredible. But Carolina, that was the play when Carolina saved that. They got kicked around to Seth in the corner. He drove, got the layup, and finished on the free throw as well. Critical stuff, getting those second chance points. Really good by the Tar Heels. Fourth and last thing before we get to your comments and questions. So by the way, if you haven't already, go ahead and start dropping those in. I mean, there's a ton of them, so I guess I shouldn't say start dropping them in, but we'll start looking at it here in a second. Is Carolina's confounding inability, I'm leaning back in my chair as I say this, to put away Miami. The Hurricanes just hung around and hung around and hung around. You heard me say it on the Monday show. Like, the first thing I said was Carolina has to get a big lead, kind of like at Virginia on Saturday, and just put this team out of their misery. That's, they're done. Miami has now lost 7 straight games. They're missing 2 of their starters in Pack and Poplar. If you can just put them to bed early, they're not going to want to get back up. They're going to want to hit snooze and keep sleeping. But Miami was hitting those threes, kept hanging around. That's fine. I get that you're going to be hot sometimes. But even in the second half, as Carolina built out to a 10-point lead, and then I think the biggest, I haven't gone through and looked at the play-by-play yet. I think the biggest lead was 14 points when RJ hit those back-to-back threes, and Coach L couldn't call a timeout for Miami because they only had 1 left at that point. So he just let them go. Well, they went on a 7-0 run, and Carolina didn't respond. And then, as we already talked about, the closing stretch really felt like Carolina should have done a much better job putting this team away, stepping on their throat and making it happen. Go into Armando more. I know that Omier was doing a good job, in the post of warding him off. But still got to find ways to more critically get this team put away and have an easier win for yourselves. Now, the good news is you're off. It's Monday. You're on the back end of a turnaround. So again, I hear that and I get that. But now you have off till Saturday when NC State comes back to the Smith Center. So that's good. But it was the exact same game. We talked about this earlier as the game down in Miami, where the Hurricanes battled back, and Carolina is same kind of thing. I think the lead got down to 2, and then Carolina was able to hold off. If Carolina had not that last defensive possession where Armando had to guard Omier in the post, I think if Omier scores there, it's tied. Am I remembering that correctly in real time? He didn't. Carolina got the rebound and went back to it. But even things like that end of game execution, like, why? I know he probably wasn't the first option, but why is Armando catching that inbounds pass? And now he's the one at the free throw line. Why aren't we Cormac was inbounding? I want both RJ and Cormac out there. So just some interesting stuff with that. But a couple critical statistical things there. Carolina for the game was 13 of 22 on layups. Got to convert more. And they typically do. It just, a lot of them didn't fall. Free throw line, obviously, I don't have to tell you there, but 12 of 21. That's got to be better. So all in all, got to put this team away. But you know what? All in all, they didn't put them away as soon as we would have all liked. But again, it is a win. All right, here we go. Let's move over to the questions and comments and thoughts and see what everyone is getting into. Oh, everyone is so stressful right now. Nintendo. We always got to start with our guy Nintendo. What's up, Nintendo? Says, was this just a one-time whiplash from being off a week, then playing against UVA's defense, and then the 2-day turnaround? Or is this performance something to be concerned about going forward? I hate to sit on the fence with this, Nintendo, but I want to, because I think there is a lot of those logistics that you mentioned that go into this, like the quick turnaround, the travel, the style of play from different style of play from Saturday to Monday, and just getting back into quick game shape. But also, this is not an isolated incident. And so, you see even like a lot of offense, defense with Seth and Elliott down the stretch. This team does need to handle those moments better. I believe that they will. So I'm not concerned about it because in both of these Miami games, they've still been able to find a way. But what happens if Omier had scored and tied it up? What happens then? You win in overtime? Do you score again? Are you able to get another bucket? I don't know. So I am going to actually fence sit on that one. I apologize for it. Got to just deal with that. All right, let's keep going here and just see what else we got. Lots of RJ love. Somebody says RJ, my glorious king. That's so good. Debbie Barker says, I saw today where the ACC approved a postgraduate scholarship for RJ. Does that mean he will probably be back next year? Well, Debbie, let me just say it this way. RJ is the last class. So this year's senior class in college basketball is the last year that has the COVID eligibility, because when he was a freshman was that year. It's not the year that was ended early. It's the year that was messed up, the 2020-21 season. And so RJ certainly can come back if he would like to. And so that, the ability for him to be back certainly is there. So Debbie, yeah, we very well could see him next year. And boy, I just can't even wrap my head around RJ being back, but it would really, really be good. Graham Bunn says, are you worried about Washington at all? Here's the only thing that concerns me with Jaylen is just his girth. I would really like to, this past offseason was his first fully healthy offseason. I talked about it, I want to say since between his sophomore and junior year of high school, or maybe it was between freshman and sophomore year. And so he's really just getting his body fully back into shape. So I'm really curious to see what a junior version of Jaylen Washington looks like. I think he'll be able to work with Jonas Saration this offseason, put some more muscle on it, because he is bigger this year than last year, but needs to keep growing and gaining some of that just body. So, I mean, you saw how North Chad Omier just plowed into Armando time and time again tonight. Jaylen, at this point, his body just would not hold up well to that. And frankly, that's not his game. That's not what he builds himself on. He is more of a shooter. He's more of a stretch guy. And I get that. So I'm not worried about him, but I just want to keep seeing him be impactful when he is in. And that's what we're looking for in a big way there. James Burris, I would tend to agree with this, says, I thought RJ handled the ball too much during Miami's final rally. The double teams made him work. I thought Elliott should have brought the ball down and allowed RJ to play off the ball. Got the dub. Yes, got the dub. Critical. Here's the thing. It's this weird mix, James, because think about the difference in the free throw percentage between RJ and Elliott. So if you're in a place where you are concerned that they're going to foul you, you want the ball in RJ's hand, not in Elliott's hand. But when they're playing possessions out, you're fine with the ball being in Elliott's hand because they're going to allow him to distribute and do stuff. When you're breaking that press, though, you just got to do it, whoever you get the ball to. And so it almost just felt like there wasn't enough urgency, right? Like there was a time when the ball was in the air, they got the 10-second call, there was the turnover. And so it's like, even when they did, it was like there was a play where Carolina had another timeout. It was one of the last plays. I think it was before Seth was fouled ultimately, where Cormac was stuck in front of the bench. He and RJ were trying to pass it back and forth because that's who you want shooting the free throws. Eventually, Cormac was able to escape, but it's Just too much one-on-one with that. I would have just liked to seen crisper execution with the press break on that. So there you go with it. Let's keep looking through here, get maybe a few more things in. Man, a win. Just remember that. This was a win. That's what I keep wanting to see. Man, good stuff. Lots of good people in, hanging out. It's good to see everybody, as always. Lots of just conversation. I'm looking for some questions here. We might not get many. So anyway, I tell you what, let's just call that a night because I still got to go record and then I got to get up early to get doing some stuff. So folks, great win for the Tar Heels. Remember, here's where we're at right now. NC State coming to the Dean Dome on Saturday. Notre Dame coming to the Dean Dome next Tuesday. If you win both of those games, regardless of what Duke does between now and then, and regardless of what happens in Cameron next, a week and a half from now, Carolina will have at least clinched a share of the regular season championship, even before the Duke game. And again, regardless of what happens in the Duke game. But you got to take care of each of those games. Saturday against NC State. Next Tuesday, Tuesday against Notre Dame. So we'll see what happens there. All right, folks, we will be back together on Tuesday's show. I'm going to end this and then go record that, and that'll be back in your podcast feed. Tomorrow, the audio will be back in at the normal time now that the audio migration's done. And then YouTube, I think I'll probably set for around 10 a.m. I'll send that out, though. All right, folks. Always a great day to be a Tar Heel, even in a stressful ending moment. Remember what RJ Davis did. Let that be the thing you remember from this game. You just got to win, and the Tar Heels did. All right, we'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.